So we've been waiting to see if Donald Trump was going to release his medical records from Butler, Pennsylvania after the assassination attempt. And what we got was a letter from former White House doctor Ronny Jackson, who apparently went and paid Trump a visit. And he writes up this letter about what he saw while he visited Trump. And in MAGA's world, that's enough. We don't need to hear anything else. We shouldn't ask any more questions. Case closed in MAGA's world. But folks, this whole thing is just starting to make less and less sense as we go forward. I want to take you now to this clip of Ben Meiselas explaining the letter from Ronny Jackson, and then we're going to talk more about it.
If you take a look at Ronny Jackson's letter that has zero credibility, what are the types of things that it says? He says things like, as the former appointed physician to the president for Donald Trump, I was naturally very concerned, as was the entire world, about his well-being after the assassination attempt. As such, I met with him in Bedminster, New Jersey, late that evening to personally check on him and offer my assistance in any way possible. I have been with President Trump since that time, and I have evaluated and treated his wound daily. He is doing well, as reported and witnessed by the entire world. He sustained a gunshot wound to the right ear from a high-powered rifle used by the would-be assassin. The bullet passed, coming less than a quarter of an inch from entering his head, and struck the top of his right ear. The bullet track produced a 2-centimeter wide wound that extended down the cartilage surface of the ear. There was initially significant bleeding, followed by marked swelling of the entire upper ear. The swelling has since resolved, and the wound is beginning to granulate and heal properly. Based on the highly vascular nature of the ear, there is still intermittent bleeding requiring dressing to be in place. Given the broad and blunt nature of the wound itself, no sutures, no stitches were required. The president was initially treated, his former president, by the medical staff at Butler Memorial Hospital in Butler, Pennsylvania, who did an excellent job evaluating him and treating his wound. I want to thank them. They provided a thorough evaluation for additional injuries, including a CT scan. He will follow up. In summary, former President Trump, there they say former, is doing well, and he is recovering as expected from the gunshot sustained last Saturday. I mean, as expected, if you're hit in the face with an AR-15 bullet and you don't require sutures at all, I mean, I think that's it's a legitimate question to ask, and I think it's also a legitimate question to say, why isn't any staff at the Butler Memorial Hospital here, the treating physicians, coming out with statements? Why do you have someone who's not even licensed anymore putting out these statements? And
that's a great question. Why haven't we heard from the doctors in Butler, Pennsylvania who tended to Trump on that day? Shouldn't we all want to hear from them? Whether you're a Trump supporter or not, to the Trump supporters out there, shouldn't you want to hear what the doctors in Butler, Pennsylvania had to say that day? Why is it that Ronny Jackson's stamp of approval is all you need if you really want to get to the truth of it and really want to know what happened? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not trying to sit here and make accusations, but could it be that Trump wanted Ronny Jackson to write that letter so that he could control the narrative? Because now it's Trump took a gunshot to the head, and we're not supposed to question that. Because this former doctor wrote this letter, we're not supposed to question it at all in Trump's world. He took a gunshot for democracy. But could it be, if we talked to the doctors in Butler, Pennsylvania, that they would have a different story? And what if they came out and said, no, it was just some glass from the teleprompter, or no, he nicked it on his way down, or no, one of the Secret Service members accidentally stepped on him as they came in? He doesn't want that said because he wants to control the narrative. And he knows that as long as he's in control of the narrative, MAGA will buy anything he says, hook, line, and sinker. Now, can you imagine if this was the other way around? Can you imagine if the same exact thing had happened to President Biden, and President Biden gave you a letter from a physician that used to look over him, and they didn't hear from the doctors that actually tended to President Biden? These are the people who every day come after President Biden, talking about how they want his medical records. They want him to take a cognitive test. But they're perfectly okay with those doctors in Butler, Pennsylvania staying silent, and they're perfectly okay with just taking the words of Ronny Jackson. You know why? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what really happened on that day. And that's the one thing that I've tried to say to all the people on the left who says, well, that sure looks staged to me. And I've got close friends and family that is like, Brando, why don't you get on there and say that it was staged, because it sure looks like it was to us? And what I say to my family and my close friends who have said that is, well, when you make those type of claims, you have to have the evidence to back it up. You can't just play a certain portion of a video and then start drawing your own conclusions and make your own assumptions, because when you do that, you're no better than they are. So until we have the evidence in front of us that proves otherwise, we have to go with what we have in front of us right now. That's the way I look at that. But in MAGA's world, it would not matter. If we could come out and prove 100% that the whole thing was just this one big staged political theater, and if we could prove that they were all crisis actors and prove every bit of that, it wouldn't matter to MAGA, because Donald Trump got the moment that he needed. He got the photo op that he needed, and he got this letter from Ronny Jackson that he needed, and that's all he needs in MAGA's world, because anything we brought out at this point isn't going to matter, because they are the true conspiracy theorists. They are the ones who, even if the evidence was presented to them, it would not change how they view it. They would say that we're trying to rewrite it and we're trying to discredit Trump, because they've already got it in their head that he went there and he took a bullet for them. That's the problem with conspiracy theories. That's why that I don't entertain them, and that's why that I won't go down into the rabbit hole of asking all these questions about what if and what about. Because when you do that, it makes you no better than them, and in their world, none of it matters. The truth doesn't matter to them. Just their narrative of Trump is all that matters, and their portrayal of Trump, and this idea that he's fighting for them. They really believe that he is out there fighting for them and he's on their side, and they're never going to entertain anything that exposes him for who he truly is, even if we had the proof. They still haven't accepted the 2020 election results. They're not going to accept the election results this go around unless he wins. You know, when Biden wins again, they're going to start the same thing all over again. And it's going to be worse this time, because they're going to be saying, no, man, ain't no way. I mean, after he took a bullet for democracy, that had to be it. He should have won this in a landslide. That's the kind of people we're dealing with, folks. And they live in that bubble. They live in that echo chamber where all of their thoughts are protected. And their narrative is always protected in their bubble. And that's why that, you know, as we go forward, we have to realize those are the type of people that we're dealing with. Those are the type of people also that votes. I point this out every time. You can call them crazy. You can call them conspiracy theories. You can call them stupid if you want to. But they're going to vote. And whether they believe in conspiracy theories or not, or whether something is a conspiracy theory or not, isn't going to matter when the votes are cast. They're going to count the same. So if you don't want to live under a lifetime of a right-wing Supreme Court and under a lifetime of right-wing leadership feeding you these narratives and giving you these letters and telling you to never question it, if you don't want to live under this type of rule, then you better vote. Because if you don't, this is what you're going to get from now on. Anytime something happens, Trump will send someone out to tell you what happened, and you'll have to take their word for it, and you'll never be allowed to question it. Right now, we're just looking over at MAGA. We're watching them live in that world. We're watching them be in that cult, and it's sad watching from where we're standing right now, but there's going to come a day, if we don't get on the side of democracy and vote this stuff down, there's going to come a day that we're just going to have to accept whatever horse shit letter they send our way to tell us what happened. And that's not the America I want to live in, and I know you don't either. So you better vote, folks.